the areas that was really blindsided by the pandemic is labor relations and collective bargaining. Many unionized employers have had collective agreements expire since the onset of the pandemic, or have agreements that are soon to expire. So Alex, what should employers keep in mind with respect to labor relations and preparing for bargaining during and after the pandemic?
Seth, I'm so glad you asked. Given the amounts of considerations that go into collective bargaining and labor relations generally and how the pandemic has affected them, really the things that employers should keep in mind could fill this seminar and more. But in the interest of time, there are three key insights that I want to share from the numerous rounds of bargaining that we've been involved in since the beginning of the pandemic last year. The first of these is an oldie but a goodie: preparation, preparation, preparation. This really hasn't changed. Unionized employers know that you're always preparing for bargaining. You're preparing for your next bargaining session before you've ever finished the current bargaining session. And that's still going to be the case. The thing to keep in mind is that traditionally understood preferences have changed. So for example, one of the things that was very common is that employers always wanted longer collective agreement periods, whereas unions wanted shorter periods, so that they could negotiate for more things. Now, given the uncertainty that's happened, employers are actually finding that sometimes shorter collective agreements benefit them because things are just so uncertain and they need to plan and they need to have more information before they can make long-term commitments. And this brings us to our second key thing, which is that employers really need to keep in mind that when things are less certain, preparing is even more critical, but it is harder, because you are going to have to be creating a lot of contingency plans and planning for, what happens in this set of instances, and being flexible, making sure that as new developments are occurring, you're building these into your plans and you're ready to pivot. And this leads us to sort of the third thing that I really want to emphasize, which is that employers would be really well advised to make sure they're keeping the union in lockstep at all times regarding the impact that the pandemic has had on the organization. I mean, if you have labor management meetings regularly, you should be talking about this. If you don't have labor management meetings regularly, you should find a reason to tell the union about the impact that the organization is experiencing. And we've found in our practice that unions, do understand some of the challenges and the realities that organizations are facing. And so what they're doing is they're putting on employers' radar that, okay, we understand you don't have the finances right now, you can't afford this. We're going to be okay with it for a very short collective agreement, but here's what matters to us, here's what we're going to be bargaining for next time. And employers can use that, again, going back to number one, in their own preparation for coming rounds. And as I said, while I could go on, I think it's best to leave it at that and turn it back over to you, Seth.